Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I wanted to talk about 10 minimalism lessons that I learned the hard way. These are all very different and some of them are obvious and some of them might not be, so with that, let's get right into it. The first lesson I learned the hard way is that organizing is not the same as decluttering. You can organize a drawer or a desk or a surface as many times as you want, but until the moment where you actually sit down and declutter it, you're going to end up with a mess after a short amount of time. So I highly recommend that when you're going through an area, instead of focusing on just organizing things, even though organizing is still important, you make sure you're really clearing out the things that don't belong. Like with this tech drawer, for example, I got rid of all this extra paper that didn't belong there. Lesson number 2 is that clutter creeps back really fast if you let it. If you don't stay on top of your clutter or you don't create designated drop zones for things like keys or earphones or your phone even, then they're going to end up on surfaces and ultimately your space is going to look very, very cluttered. So I highly recommend you create a drop zone for things like shoes, keys, incoming mail, and you'll find that it'll make it a lot easier to just keep things organized. Lesson number 3 is that buying things that are meant to help you be more minimal is still buying things. And what I mean by this is that if you're buying a bunch of reusable water bottles or reusable shopping bags or whatever you want to illustrate this with, it's still going to be an item that's cluttering your home. Even if it is more sustainable, even if it is meant to eliminate other objects, you still have to keep those in check because if you don't, they're going to just end up cluttering your house. Lesson number 4 is that you should use what you have before buying more sustainable options. In the beginning, when I first found out about things like shampoo bars and conditioners, I was like, yes, this is amazing. I really want this for myself. But I completely forgot to just slow down and use up what I had first. I don't really hoard things like shampoo bottles, but I usually have at least one spare. So just make sure that you're using up everything you already have before you substitute them, even if you are substituting for something more sustainable. Lesson number 5 is that minimalism does not have to be the same thing as frugality. Actually, successfully being a minimalist might involve heavier investments. What I mean by this is that, for example, with my Kindle, I actually had to put in a hefty amount, or in this case $130, to buy my Kindle, but this investment in the long term will actually allow me to save money on books because e-reader books are just a lot cheaper, especially if you have a subscription. But it'll also allow me to make sure that I don't end up with a bunch of books in my home because even when you're buying secondhand, you might not want to keep the book forever after you finish reading them. With my Kindle, I still will buy the paperback version of a book if I really, really love it and I'll add it to a small little library I have. But I will first read it on the Kindle. Lesson number 6 is that minimalism does not look the same for everyone. Just because you don't have that minimal looking water boiler or coffee maker that everyone has does not mean you're doing it wrong. I feel like I've seen this in a lot of the minimalism groups that I belong to, but a lot of people tend to get caught up with really cool looking minimalist gadgets and Matt D'Avella's coffee brewer comes to mind when I think about this, but honestly, I think it looks so cool, and if it makes him happy, he should absolutely have it. Same goes to you. If something makes you happy, go ahead and buy it, but ultimately, you have to be the one to make that decision. Looking at others for inspiration is always a good idea, but don't let them make you think that this is the only way to be a minimalist. Lesson number 7 is that people will judge you and or even make fun of you at times, especially if you repeat the same clothes often. It's up to you to remind yourself that it doesn't matter. I recently made a capsule wardrobe video where I talked about the same thing, but basically I can pretty much go about my life with just 10 pieces of clothing, and chances are the people are going to start noticing if I'm wearing a white t-shirt with jeans every single time they see me, but in the end of the day, I'm the only one who can really care about that and let myself choose whether I'm going to let that get to me. And you can always use things like accessories to sort of, make it a little bit better. Just keep it in mind that just because others don't understand you doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. Lesson number 8 is that you will feel like a fraud sometimes. Maybe you bought an extra purse or a jacket when you already have one, so you can't possibly be a minimalist, right? Forget the minimalism label and focus on what works for you. I don't want to go on and on about this, but it's really important that you don't let other people's definition of minimalism sort of influence how you feel about your journey. It's going to take time for you to get to the point where you want to be, and you might never even get there. It's not really a destination. So just make sure you are staying true to yourself and to your own journey. Lesson number 9, and this one's still one that I struggle with, is that you cannot convince anyone to be like you, but you can positively influence them by just living a happy life. Chances are your mom is probably never going to declutter her closet, but that doesn't mean that your boyfriend might not want to downsize his clothes if he sees you doing the same thing and sees, for example, how easy it is for you to pack. That was the case with my boyfriend, and I've just been loving the journey with him. And lesson number 10 is that ultimately there's no real end to this journey. It's going to require constant work. Trust the process, be patient, take your time, or you're going to get overwhelmed. But most importantly, just make sure that you're doing this for you, for your well-being. Just know your why and why you started and why you're doing this, and you're going to be fine. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!